The companies winning with AI aren't the ones with the biggest budgets. They're the ones who are starting right now. If you've been waiting for someone to cut through the noise and show you exactly how AI can transform your work, your wait is over. Your competitors have already signed up. I'm Kenny, founder of Brim and the host of the AI Opportunity. Welcome back to the AI Opportunity. And this week, I'm really excited to be joined by Diane Hammons. Welcome, Diane. Super excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. And I guess just for the audience to give a bit of grounding. So Diane is head of digital engagement at WG Content. We thought that Diane would be an amazing guest this week because she is not only someone who's working with AI every day, working in a creative sense of AI, but also is touching AI in the real world with outside of work, with people in their life. And we're more and more trying to give the perspective and the insights on not just AI in the workplace, but also how it's potentially changing the way that society runs. So I think it's going to be a really, really interesting episode. Diane, really awesome to have you here. Excited for you to tell the audience a bit about what you do in your day job, but also what you're doing with Pathfinders. And yeah, maybe you could start with a bit of background on you and Diane in your own words.
All right. Gosh, let's see where to start. So I am the director of digital engagement at WG Content. What does that mean? Well, I like to think of it as my role being to build healthy relationships with technology. And that includes AI in a big part now. So WG Content is a content development strategy company, agency. So we work mostly with people in the healthcare industry, that whole vertical. Health systems, insurance companies, medical devices, pharmaceuticals, on down. So my role is to help our team as well as our clients very much now think about how to incorporate AI safely, responsibly in that context of content development. Let's see, outside of that, I just am not really somebody who can slow down, I guess. So I am also a volunteer at Cincinnati Museum Center. It's an Art Deco one-time train station here in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I run tours on the weekends talking about the art and the texture and the history of that space. So it's kind of a nice, I can be forward thinking during the day. And then on the weekends, I could step back in time to about 1930 and talk about, what was very modern at that time, but feels very retro and now. So I get the all digital and then the all just really human connection on the weekend that I love.
Awesome. Well-rounded. As I said, when we first spoke, got that great American energy. So I'm sure we're gonna have a good time on this conversation. And so one of the things I wanted to delve into, and obviously our researcher had brought this up, is the work you do with Pathfinder. So Pathfinder AI, from my understanding, it's a focus on how AI is helping workspaces and companies across the broad spectrum of sizes. Could you tell us a little bit about that, Diane? And
Yeah, well, a little clarification. Pathfinders is our internal group. So what happened is, a couple years ago, and it does have expansion beyond that. But, when this whole thing called ChatGPT really launched, marketing, content development was really one of the first and easy applications for that. It'll help you write, it'll help you summarize, it'll help you write an email, it'll help you, write better headlines and social posts, things like that. So our industry was, of course, immediately threatened. And I give our leadership a lot of credit that they, instead of panicking, they said, I think you have the aptitude for this. Would you take the charge? And just seeing what it's all about and what the implications are for us. So that's when I asked for volunteers. I said, this can't just be me. There's so much to this thing called AI. And I'm one person, I'm one perspective. So I asked for volunteers in the company. Who is willing to come with me on this journey? And I was like, it is a journey because as I promised them, and I told them often, this whole thing called AI, it requires a tolerance for I don't know and the stamina for let's find out. And so I kept saying, and even the things we explore that today maybe aren't working, they might in 6 months. So I was like, you have to come with me on this journey. It's not going to be black and white, but it'll be interesting and it'll be fun. So surprisingly, surprise to me, you expect the early adopters, they're going to raise their hand. But it wasn't just the early adopters. There were people on our team that I would have stereotypically thought would be the last to want to be involved in something like this. And they raised their hand. They said, I recognize that I can't bury my head in the sand. I'm going to please push me in this direction. So, yeah, that's where it started.
That's really, really interesting because, I mean, you touched on a couple of themes there that I'd love to kind of double down on a little bit. So one
Mhm.
is actually dealing with the fear that people had. I would probably say content was kind of first in line, right? When it came to
Mhm.
AI and fear, everybody
Yeah.
now uses it to write. And so how did you deal with that when you were trying to kind of bring on volunteers, but also dealing with the executives in the organization? Talk us through that, Diane.
Yeah. Well, taking helping calm fears, I guess, by recognizing that and having leadership support that this is not an effort to try to replace anybody. This is an effort to see, like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, in a way. Like, it's a tool. Let's see what it can do for us. We have other tools. We have Microsoft Word. We have Grammarly. We have other things we use. If we could just approach it as a tool and think about how it could help us, you can get over that fear. So starting there with let's identify, use cases, pain points, and not just kind of willy-nilly at it, but really think about, okay, here's something that it's a pain. Wouldn't it be great if this could solve for this? And that helped. That helped get people past fear. And then because, so many people within our company were starting down that path of change management, change acceptance, then they could help bring their peers along. It wasn't a mandate, wasn't, bullet points in every team meeting. It was just this kind of swell, this gradual swell.
Brilliant. So you sort of built momentum, it seems, right?
Yeah.
By showing success. That's kind of what
Yes.
it seems the story was. That's amazing. And I guess when you say that you were surprised by those individuals who you thought would be last and to kind of put their hands up,
Mhm.
why were you surprised? And the reason I ask is not because of those individuals in particular, but because in our audience, we'll have a lot of sort of leaders of organizations who might have similar sort of
Mhm.
mental framings as you do, which is that some people are early adopters and some people maybe are a little bit more reserved. But yeah, what found you surprised? And why do you think those people did lean in? I'm curious.
Gosh, I was surprised because you go in with biases and stereotypes, honestly. I'll admit I had assumptions and they were not correct. And that's exactly why I'm glad that it was a volunteer thing and not where I could have easily said to our leadership, okay, I have this idea. We need this team. And let me know one person from every department who's going to represent the department. And, and that's a way to approach it. And that's sometimes you might even think the smart way because you want to make sure every type of voice and every type of scenario is represented. But thank God I didn't because it gave an opportunity for other people that would have been just passed over and assumed that they wouldn't want to be part of it to come forward. And so I guess, yeah, what surprised me, these are people who are classically not tech averse, but, maybe not the ones who love it. They're the ones who are like, I hate spending so much time in front of the computer and getting away from that craft of, these are mostly writers, that
Yep.
craft pen and paper and that experience. And I'd rather talk to clients more than spend time recording the notes. So knowing that they already had that kind of relationship with technology, I thought they're not going to be the ones that come forward. But like I said, they did.
No, it's really interesting. I've actually had a similar experience, Diane, if I might, we wouldn't
Yeah,
mind
please.
sharing. So what we found when we work with companies is that you do naturally assume that those who are tech adverse, like you say, are just going to be not interested at all. But I think the thing that's proving to be really powerful about AI is that the barrier to entry, the learning curve, is actually just being able to speak natural language. So
Hmm.
you're not really learning technology, you're learning how to express your intent, which we kind of all know how to do, right? From sort of the age of 2 or 3, we start learning how to say, I want this
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And I think that's a sort of an insight that's often overlooked when companies are thinking about, okay,
Yeah.
how do we get people to adopt technology? This technology, it's different to previous waves of technology because it's a natural language experience. I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting what you're saying about how you gave people the space to volunteer. It's the first time I've heard that, but it instinctively makes a lot of sense, right? Because people qualify themselves. You know, whether you're someone who's really adverse to technology doesn't mean you're not excited about technology that you can express your intent by speaking. It's really interesting.
Yeah, you make a very good point about the natural language, and that was something early on too that I tried to motivate the team with. I I still have a hard time with the term prompt engineering, and I know there's some magic things you can do with the right prompt. I'm not saying there isn't finesse involved, but from the get-go, that's what I was trying to explain to the team. Let's ignore that term because it makes it feel like you have to come into it with like a science and technology background. And it's natural language. And I was like, who better, in this case, writers and marketers, who better to speak natural language than you? You have the best background coming into this to be able to express your ideas and get something out of it. I think that helped too. Really, like you said, emphasizing that, look, let's ignore what everybody's saying. Ignore these terms that are getting floating around and people are using to kind of elevate themselves sometimes, frankly. Like, let's move past this and just look at what it is. And you have maybe higher skills than anybody.
It's really interesting and it's amazing actually. Something you've just said I really like, which is this idea of getting rid of the kind of like expert like
Yeah.
sheen around AI. We hear it a lot.
Mm,
We meet with companies and people want to use these words that somehow make it less attainable for the average user, right? And that actually creates a barrier. Whereas
oh,
you're
yeah.
right. Like how do you just make it simple, so that
Yeah.
everybody, because it is simple, right? It's ultimately expressing yourself with
Right.
natural language.
Yeah,
Now,
that's kind of the idea of it.
yeah, no, super, super interesting. And I guess just to delve a little deeper on the fear point, and just because you've talked about marketers and you talked about writers, and they really are right at the edge when it comes to AI. And so it's really amazing that you managed to help them overcome that fear and see it as a tool to kind of describe what you said. But I guess you must have had some people that they did have a suspicion in their mind about job replacement and displacement. How did you deal with that? Because that is a pattern every company has to
Yeah.
overcome, sort of diffusing this tension of we're not bringing AI in because we want to get rid of people. We're bringing AI in because we want to make the job easier and more productive and make everyone more successful, enjoy their job better, more morale, all these benefits. Like, how did you overcome that? Like in those conversations, if you don't mind?
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, I would say it was probably easier at our company than others might have it because we have such a strong corporate culture to begin with that there's space to have those fears. There's space to talk about those fears without retribution of or being pigeonholed as, okay, they're not going to adopt, they're never going to adopt, or there's space for that. So that made it easier in our regard. But at the same time, I will admit that I'm a little concerned sometimes, and I wonder if there's enough realism. If people have their heads up and are really seeing what's coming. Because it doesn't mean when someone says jobs won't be replaced in a context where maybe a leader says, we're not going to let AI replace jobs, that doesn't mean your job won't change. And I don't know if people are hearing that. It doesn't mean business as usual. And I don't mean you used to be, I don't know, a marketer and now you're an analyst. I don't mean necessarily that kind of change, but I mean, like we'll just take in our context things that you were writing. Some of those jobs, maybe some of those projects might be first drafted by AI. And some of them are going to be all you still, all human, because it's important. So the nature of your job may change. So saying it's not going to replace you doesn't mean business as usual. And I just don't know if people are really paying attention to that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because yeah, you are we're seeing that, right? That the nature of what is possible in an individual job is doing a number of different things. We're seeing jobs sort of expand. So suddenly someone was doing one specific domain and now AI enables them to have more capacity to do more things. But then at the same time, maybe the traditional job in its current form, it's diminishing because actually parts of it are a lot easier for AI to do. And it then means that the nature of what you consider to be a job right now has got to go in a different direction. And I think that's not really an insight I've heard again, Diane. You're just bringing loads of gold to this conversation, right?
Well, I'm glad to.
No,
Because I spend a lot of time thinking about these things. And part of it, you talk about fear, and part of it is some of those things, even though it's like, it's great, you can say someone like me can be very optimistic, as I have to temper that sometimes. 'Cause it's like, isn't it great? Isn't it great that it can do these, lower level, say, writing tasks?
yeah,
Isn't that great? Well, it's not necessarily great to the person who, like, well, those are the things I could always knock out of the park. Those are the things I'm known for. Those are, the things that when my day is going bad, I know I can check those off my list. I do them well.
yeah, yeah.
So they don't necessarily want that to go away if that's their source of identity.
Yeah, AI has the impact of potentially of causing identity crises, right? If you've
Mhm.
been good at something and that's what you're known for, and then
Right.
suddenly AI comes along and it's better, and you're having to reshape your
Yeah,
identity. There's a lot of just psychological challenges there,
it
really, right?
is. It is.
Yeah,
So that's a lot of what, not me all by myself, but, within this Pathfinders group, that's some of what we're trying to help each other and
yeah.
our peers manage.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, that I guess is really the core focus of change management, right? It's not actually just about learning new processes or, like you say, getting excited about AI and what's possible. It's how do you help your team with
Yeah.
the psychological like journey they've got to go on, whether that's the nature of their role changing, the nature of their identity in the business changing. And I guess what you see is that some people really can make that journey and have that growth, and some people can't. I mean, in terms of those who can't, um, how do you think companies should deal with that? Because that's quite difficult, right? Not everybody can make that journey of growth. So yeah, how have you seen that being dealt with effectively?
How is it being dealt with? I think how it's being dealt with probably in some places, unfortunately, are layoffs. But how should it be dealt with? I'll just say that giving people some more time, to not expecting everybody's to accept it at the same speed, and giving people a little bit more leeway so, they have time to come to grips with it or have time to experiment, and giving them time. I know, easier said than done. I'm not running a company, but giving them permission, like whatever, hour in a week to just solid block your time in and just explore with it. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not going to get comfortable if you don't do that. The other thing I see that I just cringe sometimes. A company will say, roll out some policy, to say, here's our stance on AI. Don't use it in this, and don't use, this tool, this tool, this tool, only this one, and only in these prescribed moments. And then that's it. And then they just kind of walk away, and that's AI training. But then you're left with people who are like, what do I do now? There's so much that's possible without continually showing them examples and use cases. Honestly, maybe even reconsidering your policies. Like, okay, can we lighten up a little? Can we expand where it's allowed? Can we expand our tool set? But if you just do it that one time, mark in the sand, then yeah, you're not going to help people come along. They don't have the time to get comfortable. You don't allow them a space to get comfortable. You're not helping teach them. And I've heard the other side of that, a little pushback from a leader who said to me, well, that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
This AI thing now, they should be learning that on their own time.
It's a difficult balance, right? Because yeah, I mean, I have views as a leader as well, right?
Mhm.
And I think you raise a really tough tension that I think anyone working in AI and like we are working with companies on how they implement AI, there are a lot of like second order impacts on people that like are not obvious but
Mhm.
happen. And in many respects, it does create a bit of a moral dilemma, right? I can speak myself about it, which is that
Sure.
what we hear from a lot of companies is that they're really excited about using AI, and most companies are by nature run by decent people. So
Mhm.
they want to look after their people. I mean, you can't work with people every day and not feel like you have a responsibility and a relationship with them. And especially as a leader, to make sure you're looking after the people that work for you and
Mhm.
right and have given you the somewhat the privilege to come along with you on a journey.
Yeah.
But like you say, there are these challenges, like how do you bring everyone along really quickly and get the commercial outcomes? And I think it's a big question mark at the moment in the space of AI around there is where we are today, there is the long-term benefit, and then there's this journey we've got to go on between where we
Yeah.
are now and that long-term
Yeah.
benefit. And I think many of the things that you've brought up on this call are questions that there aren't really that many good answers for right now.
No. And because everything keeps kind of changing all around, I mean, it's such new territory. That's why I
Yeah,
say you have to be comfortable with the not knowing and
yeah.
accept that we're going to keep evolving.
Yeah, no, that's a really, really good lesson. And I think there's been some really powerful lessons that you've offered here about, giving people space, not making it mandatory, soliciting people for volunteers. It might surprise you, being open, being transparent. I mean, there are many, many things that we've taken from this call that hopefully will help the audience kind of
Yeah.
work on that journey of how they go from here to that
Right.
dream of AI really being able to enable their business and dealing with a lot of the psychological and transformation questions and, execution questions, really, how do
Mhm.
you actually bring it into practice? I am very aware though, Diane, that we promised you that we'd not overrun. And this has been fascinating. And to be honest, I could go on for much, much longer, but
I could too. When I get on this topic, I can just keep going.
no, brilliant, brilliant. But we like to always end the show with a couple of questions, really. And so the first question is, from your perspective, working in the creative space and also working in a role where you interface with lots of other companies trying to adopt AI, where do you see the biggest opportunity for companies when it comes to AI?
Well, that's a big, gosh.
It is. It's why we're called the AI
That's a big
opportunity.
question. All companies or the opportunities. Gosh, I think what everybody's latching onto and hoping are those, can we save time? Can we save money? Can we do it faster? Always faster, faster. We always want to do things faster so you can get more done. Those kind of, metrics and promises. Honestly, again, I'm an optimist. And so I think the biggest opportunities are to with the right kind of guidance, build a workforce that is stronger critical thinkers because they have this tool behind them. Yes, in some capacity, it's going to make them faster, more productive, all of that. But truly giving them more time then to think, practice a little more, exercise a little bit more judgment and critical thinking, think bigger, think more creatively because they have that space to, that's an optimist dream. But I really do think it's possible. I'm starting to see little glimmers of that on our own team. I'm starting to feel it even myself, just like, oh, because it's so to be able to pop into a tool and say, okay, I didn't understand this. Let's go. Help me understand it. Let's talk about it. Let's me go further. I don't understand why a segment of the population is in an uproar about this.
Yep.
Help me understand where they're coming from in that perspective. Yeah, there's just so much opportunity to ironically have it help us,
Yep.
a machine, be more, empathetic and aware. And I don't know. I might get a lot of pushback from others that way. It's a scary line, to walk with. It's like, don't anthropomorphize it. It's a machine and stop doing that. But I think there is potential to actually help us.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Diane. And you've actually answered my last question, which is what would you say the number one use case that you have for AI is? And what I believe, and it's very similar to you, is that AI as a thought partner is hugely powerful.
Hmm.
And we even have in our team, I talk to my team a lot about AI fundamentally, if we look at where the direction of travel is going, is it is going to take on a lot of the more sort of mundane and menial work that we all do. And, we're all going to have to go through that growth of kind of accepting that because just like previously, if you were a farmer and you'd spend 20 hours a day sowing your fields, you have to accept at some point you get a tractor, right? Like you hear a lot of those critiques. And I think at that level, it makes sense that like there is a technological acceptance that happens.
Right.
But I agree with you. I think that where we as humans have our kind of defendable value and where we can really sort of start to shine is in two domains. One is improving, like you say, critical thinking. We talk about it internally as judgment. So your ability to look at information and have good judgment, because
Hmm.
judgment is a human experience, right? It's from your personal experiences, from your second and third order analysis. It's all those mental models that you build that help you understand how something is likely to play out, because you have a human experience, right?
Hmm.
AI can't
Yeah,
do that.
and some of that is even intuition.
Exactly. Exactly. That is defendable long term. And also taste. Now, it sounds like a strange word, but it's the
No.
right word. It's,
Yeah.
okay, AI writes this, in your context, writes
Hmm.
this bit of copy. It sounds great, uses the right prose,
Hmm.
it's eloquent, it's, you know, got the right vocabulary and, meets all of the mechanical tick boxes. But does it meet the mood of the times?
Right.
Will the audience really resonate with this opinion because you can get in the head of the audience, or is it actually just a
Hmm.
cold reading of text?
Yeah.
you know that judgment and taste, hugely defendable. And that's what I'd say to my team now, is that that's really what your job is now. It's to exert
Yeah.
judgment and taste, and
Yeah.
these other parts of your role, they can become more and more mechanical as life progresses, and that's okay, because what you have is truly special. It's human special. It's judgment and taste,
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I suppose the only part that I still wrestle with, as you talked about, like what's what are the lines that are the things that keep you up at night? It's the how do we give others the space to get to that sense of judgment, to build on and have experiences and to define their taste
Yes.
if they don't have junior roles because they're
Yes.
taking over? I don't know the answer to that. And so, in all my optimism, I am aware
Yeah.
there are things we need to solve,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
wholeheartedly believe you.
Yeah, I think, like I said earlier, that journey from where we are now to where we hope to be, there are a lot of questions to be answered.
There are.
And I would agree with you. I think right at the top of that is how do we make sure that there is a pathway for new people to be able to build that judgment and taste? Feels like that's a topic for a whole new
It
podcast.
could be. It
It
certainly
really is.
could be.
But it's a dilemma that keeps me up as well, in all honesty, because I do think that, like yourself, Diane, anyone in a sort of leadership role, it's a big part of your role is how you mentor and help people grow,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And it is becoming quite challenging if the young people who are working jobs are effectively deferring a lot of their thinking to AI. Do they have the space to build that capability themselves,
right,
right? And then
right,
also at the same time, if they defer everything to AI, is that essentially going to shut the door on their ability to even find these roles?
right.
Because AI is essentially, so there's a real dilemma, and something I'm spending a lot of time personally trying to think about, because it's important. It's important for the companies that we work with. I think it's a societal problem, and I don't know, Diane, maybe we rack our brains together and we can do another podcast and have a discussion about this, because
If we could solve this one, you and
it's
I'd
a
be,
yeah, it's a big
yeah,
question, and we need to
globally,
answer
we'd
it.
be relevant, but yeah,
Yeah.
I know. So for now, I just impress upon our leaders, especially our CEO. She has such great ability to assess a situation and think, but what about this? And her brain goes in so many different pathways so quickly. If you can start to teach that,
Yeah.
help everybody on the team understand what goes through your brain when you read an article, what questions come up, what triggers you, so that we can also learn to think that way. Because those are the things you need to question your AI responses about.
Yeah, 100%. Without trying to compare myself to your CEO, I have the same challenge with some of my junior staff, which is how can I teach them the mental models of experience? Because experience is ultimately just the culmination of having seen lots of things. So you've built mental models of, okay, well, I've seen this scenario before, so I know what's likely to happen. And so it's like, how do you package that up so you can help young people accelerate their understanding of it?
Yes.
One way I found it to work pretty well, and it depends on the individual on the other side of this advice, is actually trying to help them learn mental models. So like,
Hmm.
there are like 10 mental models that I think are really, really good for everybody, and helping them see when they can apply those models so they can kind of accelerate their experience, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, like your CEO, it sounds like she's very much a second and third order thinker. She sees a
Yes.
scenario, understands, okay, this is going to happen, but this might happen and then this might happen. And how do we think
Right.
about it in the context of, those second order impacts as well?
Mhm.
But yeah, I think to summarize, it's hard if you're young, right?
It is. It is. But fortunately, at least I've found, within this AI community,
Yep.
it's very welcoming. It's
Yeah.
very open. People want to help each other along. People want to help each other learn. People want to help each other manage change and help others manage change. So you just have to ask for the help. You just have to seek those, seek out those meetups, seek out those groups, seek out those like-minded people. They'll help you. I've never seen something that can really bring people together.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. And I'll take that as you're putting your hand up, Diane. If anyone in our audience is looking to answer these questions with their
Absolutely.
organizations, they should reach out to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant.
I like meeting new people. I'm willing to, share what I've learned as well.
Love it. Love it. Diane, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you've enjoyed it.
It's been great. And thank you. I could go on and talk to you more and more. We should do it sometime off air.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we've had Diane Hammons on the show, and you've been listening to the AI Opportunity. Thank you, guys.